Are you ready to dive into the latest news and updates from the world of international politics? If so, then you won't want to miss this video about the latest warnings from allied nations after the International Criminal Court ruling. The ICC's recent decision has sent shockwaves throughout the global community, and the response from our allies has been nothing short of fascinating. In this video, we'll be exploring what these warnings mean for the future of international relations and how they could impact the world as we know it. So grab a seat and get ready for an insightful and thought-provoking discussion about the state of global affairs. The International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant on March 17th for Russia's President Vladimir Putin and its Commissioner for Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, for war crimes involving the illegal deportation and transfer of Ukrainian children from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. The alleged crimes were perpetrated beginning on February 24, 2023, the day Russia launched an all-out invasion of Ukraine. Since then, Russian officials have disregarded the ICC accusation and have closed ranks around their accused leader. Dmitry Peskov, a Kremlin spokesperson, termed the charges outrageous and unacceptable, as well as null and void, because Russia, like China and the United States, does not recognize the ICC's jurisdiction. Former President Dmitry Medvedev called the international group a legal non-entity, warning that any move to detain Putin would be a declaration of war on the Russian Federation. However, ICC President Peter Hofmansky stated that Russia's failure to ratify the Rome Statute, the treaty that formed the ICC, is completely irrelevant. The court has jurisdiction over crimes committed in the territory of a state party or a state that has accepted its jurisdiction, he explained to Al Jazeera. Ukraine accepted the ICC twice, once in 2014 and once in 2015. As things now stand, the ICC's 123 member states are obligated to hold and transport Putin to the organization's headquarters in The Hague, Netherlands, if he lands on their soil. Putin's indictment would be a landmark triumph for international justice, as he would be the second sitting head of state to be charged with war crimes. The first was former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, who was accused of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes during the 2003 Darfur crisis in March 2009 and July 2010. The brutal struggle between the Sudanese government and rebel forces killed at least 300,000 people and displaced 2.5 million, according to the UN. Regardless of the validity of the charges brought against al-Bashir, the landmark indictment exacerbated widespread African dissatisfaction with the ICC's excessive concentration on investigating and punishing African leaders. In 2010, the African Union urged its member nations to refrain from cooperating with the ICC in the arrest and surrender of President Bashir, allowing countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Chad, Djibouti, Nigeria, and South Africa, among others, to welcome him. Only a few nations, including Botswana and Malawi, have shown interest in arresting al-Bashir. In 2015, when attending an summit in Johannesburg, South Africa notoriously declined to arrest him, claiming diplomatic immunity. After a South African judge ordered his arrest, al-Bashir fled the country under mysterious circumstances. Later, the southern African country claimed that it had no obligation under international law or the Rome Statute to arrest a serving head of a non-state party. Meanwhile, the ruling African National Congress correctly lamented that because countries can choose whether to be a signatory or not of the ICC, gross human rights violations committed by non-signatory countries go unpunished. This was an accurate and relevant observation. For example, in 2020, the U.S. condemned an ICC probe into the activities of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. It called the tribunal in The Hague a kangaroo court and sanctioned former prosecutor Fadou Bensouda and a top employee, Fakazo Machachoco. As a result, the ANC identified the ICC's structural and operational shortcomings, thereby making the case for broad reforms. However, it did not propose an alternative court for the thousands of men, women, and children who had been raped and died in Darfur as a result of state-orchestrated systemic brutality. Al-Bashir has yet to face justice for his alleged crimes in a Sudanese, African, or international court, nearly 8 years after evading arrest in Johannesburg. While African governments were correct to criticize the ICC's fundamental inadequacies, they should not have impeded genuine efforts to bring justice to the people of Darfur. The ICC, like other global institutions, must be reformed and decolonized as a result of global powers' violent, unlawful, and regressive policies and acts. Meanwhile, African leaders must avoid making the same mistakes that led to al-Bashir's unjust detention. South Africa will host host the 15th BRICS Summit from August 22 to 24, 2023, with leaders from Brazil, India, China, and Russia participating. Even though Russia is a long-standing ANC supporter, if the obstinate and more belligerent Putin attends the summit, South Africa must honor its commitments to the ICC and arrest him. During the battle for independence, the Soviet Union supplied significant financial, military, and political support to the South African and African movements. Nonetheless, any South African or African attempt to prevent Putin from accepting responsibility for his alleged war crimes is unjustified. Naledi Pandor, South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, said that the country has sought legal guidance on how to handle a visit from an alleged war criminal. Meanwhile, the South African Communist Party has described the ICC as a supranational institution at the service of imperialist states, and the Economic Freedom Fighters Party's leader, Julius Malema, has promised to defend Putin if he visits South Africa. The SACP and EFF predictably denounced the ICC for failing to charge and jail former U.S. President George W. Bush and former British Prime Minister Tony Blair for organizing the protracted and cruel Iraq War. Under the false premise that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, the United States, the United Kingdom, and numerous allies attacked Iraq in 2003, launching an imperialist war campaign that killed at least 200,000 civilians and produced regional instability. Nonetheless, Malema and his colleagues are waging the wrong struggle and purposefully misinterpreting the essence of international humanitarian law and global justice. Bush and Blair should undoubtedly face the full force of the law for violating Iraq's sovereignty under false pretenses. However, Putin's responsibility for war crimes in Ukraine cannot be lessened, erased, or denied in light of the United States' numerous military misdeeds around the world. Before the BRICS Summit, South Africa must officially restate its commitment to international justice and express its willingness to arrest Putin. No African country committed to establishing a just and equitable world order can ignore his violent and destructive behavior. In addition to seeking legal retribution for the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis killed in an unjust war, Africans should seek justice for victims of war crimes in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Afghanistan, Syria, Palestine, Myanmar, and Ukraine. No one, not even U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, China's President Xi Jinping, or Putin, should be permitted to violate international law and escape legal penalties, especially with Africa's cooperation. A move by Armenia's ruling party, which is a member of a Russian-led collective defense organization, stands in stark contrast to other Kremlin allies who have remained faithful to Moscow. Hungary, which has close connections with Russia, announced last week that it would not enforce the ICC's arrest warrant for Putin. Even though Armenia is nominally a Russian ally as a member of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the country's action is just the latest sign that it is willing to take issues into its own hands and hold Putin accountable. Armenia completed steps this week that will allow it to ratify the Rome Statute, the treaty that formed the ICC. According to a Russian foreign ministry source, the Kremlin chastised Armenia for considering joining the Rome Statute. The Russian Foreign Ministry warned that Armenia will face extremely negative consequences in the future. However, Armenia is not alone. Other countries are teaming up to arrest Putin. Ireland, Croatia, Austria, and Germany have all stated that the warrant will be enforced. The decision in Armenia implies that Russia's allies are becoming more willing by the day to doubt Moscow's judgment in the Ukraine war, even though the conflict has been ongoing for nearly a year. Indian officials have expressed alarm about Putin's war in Ukraine, supporting a ceasefire and the use of nuclear weapons. According to the U.S. intelligence community, Chinese President Xi Jinping has also been taken by surprise by Putin's invasion and is horrified at how he is carrying it out. This is where we end this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.